This is the second of the two videos that I want you to watch before class starts so that you're not overwhelmed on day one. If you've already watched the first video or you skipped it because you've already installed the Unreal Engine, then here we are. We've got it. Oh, we've opened up our Unreal Engine launcher. I've clicked on the Unreal Engine tab over here, so I'm going to start an Unreal project instead of launching Fortnite or something, some kind of game. And I'm going to come over here and click on Launch Unreal on there, or I could go to the library and open that up as well if you've already got a project. It's opening up on my other monitor. I'll drag it over here. So there it is. So I can open up any current project that I've been playing around with, or I can just open up a new project. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to select the first person project just because we can run around and shoot cubes and things really quickly right out of the gate. And remember, we're just going to leave this on Blueprint. We're never going to do any C++ in this class. I'm going to leave this on a desktop. Maximum quality is fine. I'm going to leave starter content checked for now. It doesn't really matter. If you change your mind later on, it's very easy to add it. If you didn't add it at the beginning, I'm going to give it a name, My Project 6, and I'm going to go ahead and create that. So this is probably what it's going to look like when you first open it. It might be slightly different. The menus might be in a fairly different configuration, but we'll just take a look at basically what's on here. So up across the top, we have regular drop-down menus like any software does. You can see this is the tab for this level. You can have a lot of tabs open. You can have different maps open at the same time. You can have materials and blueprints and all kinds of things that you're hopping around with from here. This little place actors menu, we'll leave that open for now, but it'll be pretty, this is an easy one to close pretty quickly, especially if you're working on a small monitor or laptop monitor, that kind of thing, because a lot of this is redundant. You can get it from over here. So pretty much anything that's in here, you can find in all these menus over here. The one nice thing that's nice about this is that you can search for something. If you're not sure where to find something, you can just search for it in this menu, and that makes it a little bit easier. But otherwise, this is not a really important menu to have over there. We've got the main playing menu in here, and we'll talk about navigation in this. This is our editor window, and if we want to jump in and play the game, if we look right there, you can see there's my player start. So when I start the game, I'm going to be starting right there, and I'm going to be looking toward the little pickup gun over here. So I'm going to push play up over here, or Alt-P, and you can see I just jumped into the game. So now I'm just looking around with my mouse. When you're playing in the game, when you're simulating a game, you don't need to hold anything else. You can just literally move your mouse, and you're just looking around in the scene. And then it's the WASD keys like you would have used in pretty much any kind of first-person game you've played. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick up the little ping pong ball gun, and because some of these blue boxes have physics enabled, I can shoot the little ping pong balls at these boxes, or I can push them around with my player character, and I can run around in the scene. So I'm using W to run forward, I'm using S to back up, and A and D to go right and left. I can jump with the space bar. So it's pretty simple. And again, you can add all kinds of, that's just the default functionality that's in here. You can add a character that has a jetpack that can crawl or slide or turn into a bird and fly away or whatever. That's also things that you can add to it. But the basic controls are just those that let you kind of run around in the scene, and then left mouse button to shoot ping pong balls. So I'm going to hit the escape key to jump out of there. Now I've got my cursor back in here. So if I want to move around in the scene, I have to hold down the right mouse button to do that same kind of panning around that I was doing in the game. And the reason for that is I also may want to come over here and like click on things, right? So I need to say that no, I'm just panning around in the scene by holding down the right mouse button as I click and drag over there. Otherwise, the W key also works. If I hold the right mouse button, I can use the W key and the S and the A and the D, just like in the game mode, except the difference is I don't worry about collisions. I can walk right through a wall. I can use the Q key to sink down below the floor. I can use the E key to fly up into the air, and you have more freedom of movement. And by holding down that right mouse button key and just driving around, you can move pretty quickly through the scene. Also be aware too that if you're moving very far away, it's probably not going to be too important early on in your process, but if you're in a really big level, you're doing an open world kind of thing, you can use the scroll wheel to speed yourself up or slow yourself down. If you look up in the upper right hand corner here, I guess I could just release my menu and show you, that's the speed of your camera, and you can click that open and like physically change it, or you can just like run it up and down with your cursor, the middle mouse button, as you are flying. Let me get back up on top of the level here so we're not under the scene. There we go. So you can speed things up or slow them down. If you're working kind of fine detail things and you're just, the movements are just flying you around the scene, you can slow that down a little bit just by scrolling down. Or if you're just crawling toward what you're trying to select, you can scroll that up. So that's all with the right mouse button held down, panning, and WASD, Q, and E to go down and up. And then let's select something. So I can select things in a lot of ways. I'm going to grab one of these little blue boxes over here. So if I've grabbed this little blue box, and you can notice that it's highlighted in orange over here, but it's also highlighted here in the outliner list. So a lot of software has a list, usually it's up in this upper right hand corner, that shows you like all of the things in your scene. So this is SM, that's static mesh, chamfered cube. So there's one of the chamfered cubes. You can see there's a lot of them. All these blue boxes are around in the scene. So if I want to zoom into this, a really great shortcut to learn right away is the F key, F for focus. And that's just going to bring you right into that object. And then if I wanted to orbit around this key here too, I can use the Alt button to just back out or zoom into that. And if I'm using the Alt button and that's the Alt button with the right mouse button to do that kind of telescoping here. But if I hold the Alt key down and I hold down the left mouse button, then I can orbit around the thing that I am looking at, that I have selected, as opposed to when I lift up the Alt button, now I'm moving the cube. Now I'm panning around in the scene, but I want to look at this cube. So I'm just going to hold the Alt key and see how it's, just holding the Alt key, release the Alt key, holding the Alt key. It's like I'm using the pivot point of my panning is the center of this selected object as opposed to the world around there. So that can be very helpful as well. And then this little widget that's popped up over here, that's the movement widget. That's the same thing as this little translate objects here. That's W. So W, E, and R are the controls that allow us to do basic transformations. So if I hit the E key, you can see that I can rotate an object around in space. If I hit the W key, I can grab one of these handles and move it around. So if I grab the red handle, I'm only moving it in this one axis or only moving it upside down here. If I grab this little white dot in the center there, then I'm free to move it around in any direction I want. And these little L-shaped ones in here, that's going to allow you to move it up or down in the one plane. So that's really great if you're above a scene here and you want to move props around or whatever. Like, I want to move this table over here. It can be nice to grab that one looking down at it, and you know that you're not raising or lowering it. You're not pushing anything through the floor. So the other thing that is that R key for scale. It works the same way. If I want to scale in one direction, I can grab one of those little handles, or I can scale proportionately by grabbing that white one in the center, and those little webs in the middle there do the exact same thing. They're going to scale it on 2 axes instead of the 3 axes. Notice too that they're also snapping on up here. So I have 10-degree snapping on my objects. I have 10-degree rotations, and I'm scaling things by a quarter each time I scale them. So what I like to do sometimes is maybe zoom over here and I'll grab one of these cubes that make up the actual space here. And I'm going to hit the E key to get rotation, and I'll set this instead of 10 degrees to 90 degrees. So if I'm working with something very blocky, like I'm putting a house together or something like that, I can just rotate these things on the 90s really easily by just changing that to that setting. But then if I don't want that to be there, I can just turn off that rotation lock, and now I can freely move it around 1 degree increments at a time and just spin things around in the space. So there are other views. We'll talk more about these when we get into class here. We can come up to this perspective view. We can look at things from the top view over here. This is looking straight down in like a plan view. That's that object that I was rotating. See, I can still be rotating it. There's that player start that we were using. There's the pickup gun, and there is the that cube that we were messing with a moment ago. So you can see that you can switch over to these, that's looking at it from underneath. You can look at it from the side. Where is it? There it is over there. And you can also switch from wireframe to unlit or lit view, or a lot of other ones over here too, back into perspective view. So that's pretty much the basics of the movement in the space. Before class, just go ahead and start up one of these and just drag some things around, make a few copies of things. Well, one other thing that's really good to know, if I grab an object here and I switch it to the W key, and if I hold down the Alt button while I drag, I can drag out a copy. So you can make copies of things. You can also do a Control C and then click somewhere and Control V, and that's just going to make a copy of it that way too. So lots of different ways. Go ahead and play around, shoot some cubes, move some walls around, get used to moving around in the space before class, and then if you do that ahead of time, you'll be a lot less confused when we start getting into actual assembling our first scene. See you soon.